Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and today I want to talk about organizational change. And even when we talk about change on a person-to-person level, it's still very hard for us to face, kind of naturally speaking, and most of us don't like change. And so hopefully after you've watched this video, you have a better understanding of why change must take place and what to do in order to navigate change. Most of us are doing our best to work through our career, and it is important to recognize that change is always going to happen. And once we understand why change happens and what the processes of change are, then we can learn to navigate that change more successfully and help really create more stability in our own career. One of my favorite videos that I like showing in my classes is a video called Who Moved My Cheese, and you can find it on YouTube, of course. And in that story, it's a nice video illustration of how people naturally resist change, but recognizing that change is always going to happen and embracing change really can have positive effects. The one big thing about change is we fear the unknown, and we don't always know what we don't know, but most of us, as we get older in age, have gone through changes a lot, and we've survived those changes, and usually those changes have turned out to be much more positive than what we have thought. So as you get older like I am, hopefully you'll discover that change really should be embraced, and knowing how to navigate change to the best really will help you have more positive outcomes in your life. We've probably all heard of the 4 stages in the change process. There's denial, resistance, exploration, then commitment. And I'm going to repeat those 4 stages again because it really is kind of important to understand that we all go through those 4 stages to some degree in every change process. So the first one is denial. I can't believe they're going to make this change, or this is happening to me. Resistance. I'm going to fight this. I cannot. There's no way they're going to make me do this thing. And then exploration. I just think fighting it will ruin my reputation, so I'll try to go along with it. And finally, commitment. You know what? Nobody's dying through this change, or I'm seeing other people be successful through this change process, or I think I can be successful in this change process, so I'm going to commit. So remember, denial, resistance, exploration, and commitment. And the quicker you can move through each of those 4 stages, the happier you could be. Because as I'm fond of saying, you get to choose your own happiness. And so really learning how to navigate yourself is truly key to being an effective employee. Very often, companies will not foresee change, and they end up doing things that can dramatically affect their success. When I was growing up, one of the biggest companies out there was a company called Montgomery Wards, and they were a catalog company. And when the internet started becoming growing, a lot more companies were competing with Montgomery Wards, and Montgomery Wards still maintain their expensive catalog stores, and it's hard to compete with the whole world when you have big expenses like producing a full color catalog. A catalog is like a colored book, for those of you who don't know what that looks like. There was a clothing manufacturer here in the Pacific Northwest called Lamont, and that went out of business because they didn't embrace change quick enough. But in every industry we see companies that all the time don't embrace change quick enough, and they end up going out of business, or going through bankruptcy, or nearly going through bankruptcy until they can reorganize. Some of the best things to do as you go through change as a leader is to recognize that we need to embrace differences and be able to collect that our organizational teams have a collective identity and goals. we as leaders need to foster support and recognize that there will be confrontation as part of the natural processes. But when we're having conversations, we got to focus on performance, learning, and development. We're going to need the skills to take in order to take our careers to the next level. And as leaders, we need to make sure our people have the skills that are needed. And so we need to really be able to have a balance in making our decisions and get input from the people that are involved and that are going to be affected anyway in the change process. One of my favorite stories is to look at, one of the biggest retail companies in the world. It's Walmart. They weren't always the biggest. And when the internet came around, one of their biggest competitions that had been around for a long time is Kmart. And Kmart chose not to embrace the internet at the time, and they put more of a calling card out rather than actually selling their products on the internet. And Walmart made the investment and sold their products on the internet and was able to gain a larger market share quite quickly. One of my favorite David and Goliath stories is there was once a small company called Dell, which was the brainchild of a Michael Dell from his dorm room. He recognized that giants like IBM and Hewlett-Packard, the big computer manufacturers, were mass producing computer parts and storing lots of parts in their warehouses because they mass-produced these computers. And Michael Dell said, listen, I'll customize computers and build computers one computer at a time according to the needs of my clientele. And Dell quickly outgrew Hewlett-Packard and IBM, who were the big giants in the computer manufacturing business at the time. So one time Ford and General Motors were the biggest car manufacturers in the world. And a small Japanese company, Toyota, was really focused on quality, and so they ended up taking out these two companies in sales because they had a stronger focus on quality, where Ford and General Motors didn't make the necessary changes in their company to create as quality as a product. So companies, we have a long history of being able to look at companies that have failed or went through the process of losing market share because they did not constantly seek change. Things that create external sources that force companies to change are technology, the economy, market niches change. Human and social needs and values are constantly changing. Government policies and laws and regulations cause organizations to change. Internal forces, leadership and vision changes. Performance of the organization, profitability, new customer acquisition, customer retention, market penetration, all these things have an internal focus, which makes organizations need to change. Workforce demographics are constantly changing. If you have been in the workforce for very long, you recognize that we are becoming more and more diverse, whereas it used to be the workforce was primarily Caucasian. Now we have more people of color and women in the workforce than ever before, and so those demographics are constantly changing. Workforce attitudes, people are seeking work-life balance and trading their loyalty to companies who provide them with more rewards. So employee dissatisfaction is something that causes people to seek change. And so if organizations want to stay strong, they need to come up with plans to maintain their market share by keeping their employees happy rather than creating environments where people don't like working for their company and create more expenses because they leave the company. And potentially they're taking their knowledge and their potential customers to the competition, making the competition stronger. So as leaders, we have to create plans to help employees stay satisfied and want to grow with our organizations. That's the right way of being. We have an emotional journey to change. You know, we often see fear and anger and resistance. Then people will, you know, be a little more inquisitive and experiment and discover. So there's always things that we as humans need to recognize are part of the change process. Why change happens. As a leader, I'll give you these notes from Bridges. We really need to recognize what people are losing in the change process. We have to accept the reality and importance of those subjective losses. We need to acknowledge the losses openly and sympathetically. We have to expect and accept the signs of grieving. You know, we're human. We have to compensate people for those losses. We need to give people information and do it again and again. You know, information really is important. We need to be transparent in the change process. We have to define what's over and what's not over. Not everything is going to change, and we need to recognize where those endings are. And we need to treat the past with respect. We need to let people take a piece of the old way with them and show how endings ensure continuity of what really matters. There's other models out there like Lewin's model where there's unfreezing and then moving and then refreezing. You know, people will need to change the way that they do things and learn how to do things differently and then continue to do those processes differently. So lots of different models. I'm a firm believer in that we need to maintain employees' self-esteem, and no matter what position they have, you know, people have the right to feel respected, and we need to honor people by helping them maintain their self-esteem. We need to listen and respond to employees with genuine empathy. We need to be inclusive as leaders and ask employees to help solve problems. We need to make sure that as leaders we're offering help without taking away any responsibility. We need to see that goals and measures are associated with all the activities. And we need to position employees for success rather than failure, and we need to set up appropriate controls when delegating and provide the necessary support. So there's a lot of things that go on with change that we as leaders have to consider. We need to make sure that also we're creating an organizational culture where people want to change in things that represent our culture, are our heroes in our organizations, our stories, our slogans, symbols, you know, plaques and pins and certificates, you know, gifts to our employees. We need to have ceremonies to honor people who are meeting our organizational goals. We need to make sure that people are getting the proper training. You know, we're human. We don't know what we don't know, but most people want to be successful. But if you're not setting employees up for success by making sure they have the right training and development, we're not doing a very good job as leaders. So we need to make sure that we're following up and we are doing objective performance appraisals and making sure that we're very clear on what our expectations are. And we need to honor people, you know, where they are, and help give people the feedback in order to help them perform and be successful in our organizations. So we need to plan, give facts, state clearly what's needed, create win-win situations in everything that we do, involve employees as much as possible, provide support. As leaders, we can't lose our cool. We need to calm, and we need to avoid direct confrontation, but make sure that we're being ethical and using our power appropriately. So I know I've given you a lot about change to consider and organizational culture. For sure, they go hand in hand. You got to have a healthy organizational culture in order to move through changes, and changes are always needed. So I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great day. And remember, only you get to choose how you feel about it. Thanks so much.